Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome back, everybody. I'm excited. I have Wilbur Jennings with Wilbur Design and Construct. They are located in Marquette, Michigan. They're a design build firm out there doing really great work. Really excited to have you on the show. Welcome to Builder Stories, Wilbur.
Oh, thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so why don't we kick it off here? Give us, a little bit of background, who you are, how'd you get into construction, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so I got into construction at a really young age. I had a tool belt on at the age of like 13, working trades with my uncles, and they let me go in and mess up a whole bunch of stuff. And my grandpa owned real estate, so he had all these apartments, and you just like, yeah, go install that floor, or go put that, do some framing over there, some drywall. And I was doing stuff at such a young age and making so many mistakes early on, and I just had the opportunity then that it just kind of grew into a passion over the years. And I moved away from it a little bit, but then jumped back in. But yeah, I started at a really young age, the passion for building, and so that's kind of where I ended up now. But
That's awesome. I love it.
yeah, absolutely.
So what led you to start Wilbur Design and Construct?
So we actually, my wife and I decided to get out of commercial construction. So we both have backgrounds in commercial construction. We have construction management degrees. Mine's from Northern Michigan University right here in my hometown. She's from Minot, North Dakota, so she went to NDSU, and we actually met on an internship in Texas. And then we ended up moving to North Dakota and then moving to Marquette, and we finally started a business with the end goal of being a commercial construction company. Well, when we got here, it was really tough. The commercial market was there wasn't a lot of demand. It was over flooded with contractors, and the margins were really low. And I'm like, well, man, if we're going to get into this, I better figure out something to do in between jobs, because I'm not going to have a job and we're going to go broke here. So I'm like, I'll just get a builder's license. No problem. I had a degree in construction management. I'll just go take the test and get a builder's license and start doing some remodeling, because I had all this background. So I went and I go to try to take the builder's exam, and they're like, well, you need to take 60 hours of training. You need to get the certificate before you can take the exam. And I was like, I have a 4-year construction management degree. That doesn't qualify me. They're just like, not with your program. I was like, huh. So a quick tangent, we actually went back to Northern Michigan University and had a conversation with the professors. And now their program, when they graduate, they can walk right into that office and take that test, and they don't have to do any additional training. But
That's awesome.
I didn't get that luxury then. So, but yeah, so I just took the exam, got my builder's license, and then we started doing little small projects. Like, I think my first project was a basement remodel for like $10,000 or something. I remember our first year looking at the average job cost, or the average job size for our first year, and it was like $5,600 or something like that. Just some like really low number. And to think about where we are today, it's like incredible, like the amount that we've grown. But that's where it started. We started as like the intention of just filling in work, and then the demand just kind of grew, and we're like, okay, well, this is more profitable than what we were anticipating commercial to be, and there's a huge demand for it. So we just stayed in the residential lane, and then we just kind of built one thing after another off of that. And so here we find ourselves in this niche now, and don't have any desire to get into commercial construction. So
Yeah, nice. And how many years ago was that?
that was 10 years. We're celebrating 10 years this year. January 1st, we celebrated 10 years.
Awesome. Congrats.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, those first jobs, what were they, and how did you get your first customers?
Oh, my first customer was a friend. This is the first two people you get, right? Friends and family. And we just started our job, and we were moving from commercial construction. We were making lots of money there, and then we moved to Marquette. Everybody's like, "Don't start a business. It's gonna go broke. It's gonna fail." And we're just like, we're doing it anyways, because we want the freedom and the flexibility. And we come in, and that first job was like a basement remodel, and then I think my second job was like, like a deck or something. And it was just a bunch of these little jobs. And that first year we made $25,000. I was like,
Wow.
success. We made money. We didn't lose money. So,
Yeah.
and that was it. So it was a huge pay cut, but it was this weight like lifted off you. Like, I can do this.
Yeah.
There's direction here, right? I can make it. I can make it work. And so that was it. And so all those jobs that first year is like, there's just like little bathrooms, updates. I think we did a kitchen. And then the following year, a breakthrough for us was we got an insurance job, and it was like a $60,000 job. And this was like, whoa, this is like big, okay, and I didn't really know how to attack it, like estimating, and so we completely underbid it. We just went off of what the insurance said they would pay, and we like barely broke even. And I'm like, okay, well, not going to stay in business doing that, but we learned a lot, right? And it seemed like these catalyst projects through the years are like that, right? You don't maybe know exactly how to approach them. You're kind of taking a chance on things, and maybe you don't make a bunch of money, but you get all this experience, and that lets you, kind of paves the way, sets that foundation for the growth in that new category that find yourself in. So it's just like that every other year. We're doing like a bigger project outside of our comfort zone, and then but yeah, and then we grew. But those first projects, man, they're $5,000-$10,000 projects, and we had a
Yeah.
handful of them, and yeah, it wasn't much.
So what's the team look like today that you've got in place?
So the team today, we've got an estimator and a drafter. We've got a project manager. We've got a field crew. We've got a marketing director and a designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many people is that total?
There's 8 of us total.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
and
great. I'm curious, who was your first hire? I assume it was kind of just you and your wife for a while.
it was, and not even really my wife, because we decided to not just start a business, but have a baby the first year and buy a new house that was completely dilapidated, because we're like, oh, we know how to remodel. So we'll remodel a house, start a business, and have a baby.
Wow.
I do not recommend that to anybody. So, in your first year. So, but, yeah, early on, it was just me. I was out there swinging the hammer. I still love, doing work. But my wife keeps me plenty busy with home projects. So I get, I get in the field there. But early projects, it was me. And then I hired a friend, and then my next hire was my cousin. And then I didn't really know how to I didn't have like a process for interviewing or a process for trying to find new people for our team, and I didn't really even know how to be a good leader or a boss
That's
at that time. I was just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't have any really like mentors or anything. I was just kind of in my own mind, just kind of paving my own path. And looking back now, I'm just like, if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now, I would have approached it completely different. So but yeah,
what.
first hires were just friends and family, and then,
Yeah,
word of mouth. So
yeah. That's that's where I hear a lot of people start, and you kind of you're just learning trial by fire, continuing to build, and jobs get bigger over time. You can kind of get more confident taking on larger and larger scopes. Eventually you need to keep building out the team. So that's the common path. Every entrepreneur just charges and charges ahead and charts their own path there.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
What would you say, like, were you kind of talked about landing that $60,000 job, as kind of one of those sort of critical turning points for you, where it really kind of took it up a level. Were there any other moments like that along the way that sort of kind of kept you moving up?
Oh yeah. There's one particular project, and so this new architect moved into town, and they had ties to the area because I think they went to school here. And they reached out to us to see if
Whoa.
we could do this project. And it was essentially this first, like, 1-story bungalow style house. They wanted to take the roof off and go up a whole nother story. And then they had this concept of a dual pitched roof. And so they're like, can you do that? And I was like, absolutely, no problem. I can do that. Never have done a project like this, right? But I'm like going forward with the confidence, like, hey, no matter what it is, we'll figure it out and we can do this. And then we put our bid in and we got the job. And that's when I started sweating. I'm just like, okay, we've got the job. Maybe I bid it wrong. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to make a ton of money on this or not, or if even break even, but we got the job and now we have to start. And I'm like, what are we going to do? And so, at that point, then now I'm talking to the truss manufacturer, doing, visits with them and talking about like what we have to do because we have to build walls on a slant and block them down and then set trusses on these slanted walls and make the roof lines line up. And I was like, this is way more complicated than a basement remodel or a kitchen remodel. And that project really pushed us out of our comfort zone. I worked in the field on that project and in the office. And I think that was a catalyst project for us because somebody gave us an opportunity to move outside our comfort zone, probably not knowing that. I don't know if they would have hired us if they knew that we had never done anything like that and that I was a little bit skeptical about it to begin with. But we pushed through. Once again, we didn't make any money. I mean, we broke even. We had made enough to pay everybody, and we didn't lose money, but the company didn't make any money. At that
Yeah.
point in my career, I wasn't really even thinking about the company making money either. Anyways, I had, my mindset wasn't there. My mind was like, okay, if I can make enough to survive and pay my bills, then I'm doing good. And so we made money, but it was a huge learning experience. So but the company didn't make any money. The company
Yeah.
didn't, so we grew and that boosted our confidence so much that then now we're going into these projects and saying, yeah, hey, we can do additions. Matter of fact, hey, we can tear off roofs in the middle of the winter in this UP weather and build you a second story. No problem, because we've done it now. And
Yeah.
but I remember a specific moment on that project. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm laying in bed and we're getting hit with a blizzard. It's like 40-mile-an-hour winds and just snow, like you get an inch or two of snow every hour. And I'm like, and we only got half of our trusses set, and even half of that's sheeted, and we've got it braced off. And I'm thinking in my mind, this place is gonna blow over. Like that, we're gonna go there tomorrow, and the whole roof system is gonna be gone. And I'm like, I gotta go. And turn over in my bed, and I told Amy, I was like, I gotta go, and I gotta like get up there, and I gotta put more bracing on this because this gonna fall apart. And she's like, what? And we have a newborn baby in the other room. And I'm like, I need to go and climb up trusses in the middle of a blizzard and start screwing 2x4s into extra bracing. She's just like, okay, well, I'll start praying for you. And I go down there and I climb up into the rafters and the wind's blowing and things are moving around. And I'm, as fast as I can, screwing 2x4s wherever I think I could do it. And I go back home, didn't get hurt. And the next morning we went up there and 2 trusses were cracked. Like, so I feel like, wow, I saved that project because, and then we called the truss designer and he sent us an engineering fix and we were able to do it on site and we kept moving. But it's like when I was up there blowing around in those trusses with an impact gun, putting screws in them, it's like, have I made the right decisions in life? Like, is this the path I want to be on right now?
Yeah.
And then when I
Well,
got home and we got through it, I'm just like, you know what? That was a huge challenge. We went through it and it made us stronger. Yes.
no.
Yeah. We're on the
So,
right path.
you've kind of talked about multiple projects that were very challenging for you from a
Mhm.
from a financial standpoint. I'm curious. How is your process, your estimating process? How has that evolved since then? Like, how do you make sure today when you're bidding on a job
Yeah.
that you're not making those same mistakes that you were making before?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. Uh, y- so the point where um, you realize that your company needs to make money just as much as you need to, survive and have a living off your company. That was a big learning point for me. And that concept just kind of like never was brought to my attention. I don't come from a background of, entrepreneur in my family. And so it was kind of a new learning experience. But when I actually joined the 20 club, um, that's when it really kind of turned around. And that was just only like a few years ago. And so we had made some profits up until then, but really diving into the numbers and dissecting the financial part of it really helped. And we had been using project management software before that. But at that time, we also had made this switch to JobTread too. And because of that feature of, being able to break down the financials a lot better. And so that was it. Like, just like the education on it. Like people were just like, yeah, your company's supposed to make money too. And it's like, oh, um, Yeah, I guess so. Like, if you want to like turn around and sell your company someday, you need to make your company profitable. You just can't have you know, it making you money. It like needs to be its own entity in a sense, right? And so that's when we really started focusing on like margins and job costing. And job costing wasn't even a thing for us for the first 5 years of a business. We didn't like, I didn't even know what it was. And now it's like every single project we job cost, and we have a project debrief on with our whole team that was involved in the project. And so right from the beginning stages of estimating or even that consultation, that whole project experience, for our clients, and then for the way we assemble the project, it's very process driven now. Everything we do has a process behind it. And not to try to plug JobTread again, but like we've built our processes in that system, so we don't even have to think about it. Right, we're essentially taking the thinking out of the day to day operations and putting it into checklists and to dos and schedules, and so we can just literally, our project manager can walk out to a project and say, okay, well, this trade is complete, and now we've got the drywall and painting evaluation. It's a 20-point checklist, and he literally just goes through there like an oil change, and just
Yeah.
check, 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 check. And ever since we implemented processes, our margins go up, job costing got easier, our projects get shorter, smoother, client happiness is through the roof. In the last year and a half, we haven't had a project go over budget or over time. Not one,
That's awesome.
unless it was homeowner driven. Like, we get a lot of that. Like, we had one project, literally, the homeowner's like, I'd like to make a change order and do a whole nother bathroom addition or a whole nother bathroom renovation. Right? So $60,000 addition to their original scope mid project. And we were able to complete that with just an additional 2 weeks of time because we weaved it right into the schedule. So, but we wouldn't be able
Man.
to do that without processes in place.
Yeah, that's so huge, man. And again, I hear the same story a lot where, the notion of job costing is just a foreign concept. Like nobody understands it. And I'm a little surprised. I mean, I guess do they not teach that in the construction
Oh
management
no,
course,
they
or is
do.
it s-
It wasn't them. It was me. Yeah. And
okay.
I was very resistant to it. And my wife had been telling me for years and years. And then our CPA is like, yeah, you should probably start job costing. And I'm like, yeah, and then actually when, we started job costing, my wife's like, "I told you. Yeah, see, I've been telling you this for a long time, right?" And I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, you're right. You're right."
No, it's so important, and it really can make all the difference in the world, being able to make sure that you're hitting those target profit margins.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it sounds like really, joining the NAHB 20 club. I mean, was that kind of like your first real sort of when you surrounded yourself by, a bunch of other builders who were, probably farther along, maybe they had some of these systems processes like they, was that kind of like that turning point where you really got exposed to, hey, maybe there's a better way that, I need to start learning from them?
Yeah, a lot of that, and, even moving into that 20 club, I
And
was
can you tell us a little bit for those who don't know, what are the 20 clubs?
so the 20 clubs are, little offshoots of National Association of Home Builders. So essentially, they're like-minded people. They're in non-competing areas around the country, and they're grouped together, so you can talk about everything business. And all your finances, logistics, client relations, hiring, and all your processes, and also you get a really good personal relationship with everybody. And then with our 20 club, we know a lot of times we're bringing family to we have 2 in-person meetings per year, and they're usually at a host city site. But we do monthly Zoom meetings, and we talk about everything business. And then we've got like a text thread. So where if anything pops up day to day stuff, it's like literally like I can have an answer like from 10 guys on any kind of issue that I'm going through right now. And right. And that kind of quick access to that knowledge is invaluable. And but yeah, there's a process you apply to get in, and then you go through the interviewing process, and then you're accepted into a club. And of course, there's dues that are involved, and there's definitely a financial obligation that comes with it because there's a lot of value that comes out of it. So if you're not willing to put the financial uh, uh,
Investment.
investment into it, yeah, then really it's not a good place, right? So, uh, but yeah, so I've got a lot of experience from them. But when I first joined, I almost felt like, am I qualified? Right? I mean, like, do I have enough experience to bring to the table? And just the stories that I was able to tell, and then some of the things that some of the problems that we worked through, those were helpful to other people too, and so that was nice to hear and get feedback from them. But as far as like getting control of the finances, that was a big thing because they're like, well, first thing was like you had to like open up your books, like here you go, you get to see everything, and there's like, "Why are you doing that? And why are you doing that? And why aren't you making money here?" It's like, "And why is your profit margin so low? And why is your" and it's they'll like call you out, right? So it's accountability and they keep you in check. And so and then they also help you put systems into place. And then the 20 club that I'm in, where there's 15 members, the 20 club means that you can have up to 20 members in that club. And right now, I actually think there might be they might be trying to start another remodeling 20 club because I think there's only 5 of them in the country, which means there's about between 75 and we'll say 125 people that are in these remodeling 20 clubs. And then there's a bunch of builder 20 clubs as well. Uh, but we're a part of a remodeling 20 club because
Awesome.
everybody in our club does remodeling. And some of them do design and remodeling. Some of them actually dabble in commercial a little bit, and some of them do spec homes and some custom home building. Some of them are just a designer that do remodeling. So we have a good group of guys, but we all kind of have a similar revenue, and we all have similar interests, and we're in non-competing markets, so we can share everything. And it's nice to see, what guys out on the East Coast do versus, the West Coast and down in Texas, and so, where you're down in Texas somewhere, right? Are you guys in Austin?
We're in Dallas,
Or you're in
Texas.
Dallas? That's right. Okay, so one of our members, he's in Austin. It's just south of you. So, um, but yeah, it's nice to get these different, you know, um, well, it's nice to see that everybody's got the same problem everywhere else,
Yeah.
and we're all kind of focused on that. But it's also nice to see the different demographics, the different demands in the market, how things are fluctuating, and but yeah, for the most part, we're all going through the same problems.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's so helpful, and we've got a bunch of there's a lot of different ways that people can get involved and find a network of like-minded people, and I think it's so important because as entrepreneurs, a lot of times you're shouldering the entire burden of the company. Like, you feel like you're kind of up there at the top, you're alone, nobody else gets it, and it's like that's not the case. Like, so many other people are going through the same thing you are, or they've already been through it and would be happy to share their experience and what they're learning. I mean, just like how you're on here today, sharing your story and your journey here. I mean, like, it's so important for people to go find ways where they can, just get that experience and take a little bit of time to find those networks, those communities, find your tribe, and get involved with others because it's so powerful, and it can really alleviate so much of that stress while giving you new ideas and a fresh perspective that sometimes, when we're heads down, just focused on our own business, we got some blinders on at times, and, how you open up your books and just get everybody else giving you their 2 cents from afar. I mean, like, that can just open so many different, ideas for you and things that you might not have thought of that, you wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
yeah, it's really as easy as a business owner to become like, oh, I don't want to say narrow minded, but to get to the point where you feel like you need to be like viewed as in control all the time, right? And I think it's really important to get vulnerable sometimes and open up and be like, I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
And here's where I made all these mistakes. And you know what? I don't have everything together. I've got areas that are just like chaos, right? But I've got other areas that I've got dialed in, right? And that's a good offset, right? So I think it's important, as a business owner to just be open minded and say, hey, you know what? I've got weak spots and I'm willing to share my vulnerabilities to learn and grow and
Yeah.
constantly have that mindset of growth, growth, growth. And somebody out there has probably done it, probably gone through the same thing. and they could probably help, right? So
Yeah. So I'm curious, again, you started off, you know, wearing all the hats, selling the jobs, doing the work with the tool belt on, like, how has your role evolved and like what do you focus on day to day, in today's, 10-year-old business?
yeah, well, I still like to keep my head in the finances. So I do a lot of the bookkeeping still and just kind of like the overall direction of that. So I mean we have our CPA and they help with a bunch of stuff and we have a quarterly management meeting with them. But yeah, doing whip reports and I like to keep my head in the numbers, right? And just kind of know that we're okay there and that we're tracking and we're staying on budgets, right? So it's another thing, budgets. Never had a budget until like 4 years ago, right? Who and didn't even know the concept really. I'm just like, okay. So, making sure that we're staying on budget and then, really having the company vision. What I've found over the last few years is that when you're trying to onboard and build this team of A players, you need to have a company vision. You have to have, hey, this is the direction we're going, and this is how we're going to get here, and this is what the organization is going to look like. And then that instills confidence in your team to say, hey, you know what, we're going somewhere, and I can jump on board this, and I can have a long term investment of my career in this company. And so that's really important. So earlier on, this is probably 5 years ago. We sat down, we created a mission statement, we created our commitments to our clients and to our team. And we spent a whole day working together, and that was fantastic. It brought us closer together as a team. And so to this day, we continually, use those commitments in our mission to help us with the direction of the company. And so I focus on that a lot. Like, okay, where's our growth going to be? Like, what is our, is our target client still what it was from last year? Do we what do we want our average job sizes to be? Where do we want to go for that? Like, and then being able to just help people work through stress management because project management and estimating and those are demanding jobs. And when we pile a whole workload on to people, that can be really overwhelming. So, uh, I like having flow charts, the Kanban charts. Those are really nice because they tell you immediately where there's a bottleneck and
Yep.
then you can kind of work through that. And so that's been really my main focus is making sure that our systems and processes are working and then we're adapting and we're growing. So, like right now, my main focus was changing the way our process was from like our initial consultation, and then it went to design, and then it went into estimating, and then we went to, so we had these different areas that we went through. And we found that we were spending a lot of time in building preliminary budgets for people to view before they went into a design contract. And it's like, well, sometimes we'd have 20 hours into these things and we wouldn't get the job. And so we reformatted that. I created a scope development agreement. And now what we do is we've bundled a little portion of the design, a portion of the scheduling, and a portion of the estimate and captured it into one more clear picture and said, hey, this is what you can have if you sign the scope development agreement, put down a retainer fee. And it's like we have like a $1,500 minimum fee on that. And that applies towards the work that goes into that. And so now, after our initial consultation, we get paid for everything after that. And people are a lot more likely to jump into something like that because they're not committing to a full design and they're not committing to construction either. And so as soon as we did that, we signed like 7 contracts in like 2 weeks. And
Hmm.
everybody on our team is like, whoa, how are we going to handle this? I was like, okay, well, let's lay this out. And then so that back to me, that's where my job is to really kind of like layer this properly so we can manage that. So we can manage that amount of work.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. I
yeah,
mean, again, sometimes it sort of takes stepping back to be able to see the forest from the trees there and like,
yeah,
really understanding where your bottlenecks were and where, I mean, again, you're sinking 20 hours into something that, goes nowhere. I mean, yeah, you can't afford to do that, too many times. And so,
exactly.
it was a great move to kind of, hey, let's let's get something up front, get some skin in the game, make sure, if it goes nowhere, at least we got something here. But, I think it's, really smart of you to really be able to look at that and understand the impact on where your people are spending time, and are we kind of progressing this customer along, to hopefully get them into the construction.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing we really developed is a mentality of like solution oriented. So, I've got guys that work for us that have come from companies where they've been beaten up, not physically, but like mentally and like, and I think the industry as a whole, like the construction industry kind of has that like, like that tough guy, that rough guy that, it's an environment of like cuss words and, people get chewed out for things, but we've created a culture around here where that's just not acceptable, and we don't treat each other that way. And so,
No.
and when everybody makes a mistake, it's really comforting knowing that if something happens, it doesn't matter how much of a mistake it is. It could be a $5 mistake or a $5,000 mistake. I know that our team's going to come to me and say, "Hey, here's the mistake. Here's how we fixed it. And here's the solution moving forward that's gonna help us prevent it from happening again." And when somebody comes to you with that, how can you not be just like grateful, right? That
Yeah.
wow, okay, so you just in my mind, so you just saved us thousands of dollars down the road. That's the only way I can think about it. Rather than like you just cost me 2 grand, right? And that's the mentality we've been driving for the last few years, and it was a game changer. Now everybody's like comes to me and they're excited. Yeah, I made this mistake. It was like $2,500, but this is what I did to fix it, and here's how we changed the process. And I'm just like, awesome. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
No, that's
Thanks for
great. It's
saving me $15,000 next year. You know,
yeah.
so yeah, so that was a big change for us too because early on I didn't really know how to approach people that made mistakes. I mean, because I grew up in the same kind of atmosphere. It's like you make a mistake and you kind of get your hand slapped, and like that was stupid. Why would you do something like that, right?
Yeah.
And shamed even to a point. And so we just eliminated that altogether. And now we have people like that are more eager to make positive change. They're not afraid to make mistakes, which gives them more autonomy and more purpose because now they're not like, okay, hey, this is my task list. This is the only thing that I can do. So yeah, it's really opened us up as a team.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm also a big believer. I'd rather people, try something, fail, learn, improve, than to never try, new things. Like, I mean, that's where innovation comes. That's where growth and improvement and,
Absolutely.
strength comes is through taking risk and through,
Yeah.
trying things. Now I'm not okay with we can't make the same mistake over and over and over again. I mean, that's,
Right.
that ain't gonna work. But as long as you've learned and you understand, what went wrong and how you can prevent that in the future, I'm totally cool with mistakes too. I mean, you just
Yeah.
you can't beat someone up for trying something that didn't work out, and or making those mistakes. I think that's how you quickly drive them away.
Yeah.
Is if they're fearful every day of making that mistake.
Yeah.
Um,
Before I was like, well, why would you even think about doing something like that? Right. And now it's like, that doesn't even pale in comparison to some of these mistakes I've made. So
yeah. Earlier, you mentioned that you didn't have an annual budget for the company for the first 4 years or so, or first 6 years, or however long it was. Like,
yeah.
I'm curious, like, how did you realize that you needed to start creating that plan for the business? Because I actually just yesterday we're working on our second kind of playbook. We published the business playbook, and so I just we've started working on this financial playbook, and one of the main components of it is this annual template, this annual budget template that any company can use to really, forecast their revenue, their gross profit, what all their overhead's going to be, and ultimately, their net income. And the goal is to help them to better sort of financially manage their business. So I'm curious, how did you figure out that you needed that? And where did you start, and how has that process evolved for you, where
Mhm.
you're now using it as, I assume you're using it as a regular tool to financially manage and track your progress?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we use regularly now. I think the turning point for me was um, at one point we had about 10 people on our staff, and we had grown. and I was only looking at the revenue growth year after year. And on my spreadsheets that I had built, we had a nice clear, it was a nice even line going up. And like, this is great. We're at a slow, steady growth. Um, what I saw was at a certain point, we had, you know, oh, 10 people on our staff, but I wasn't making any more money. Like, my salary didn't go up. The company wasn't making more money. And so we were growing revenue wise, but it was a flat line on net profit. And I'm
Mm.
just like, well, if this is what's going to happen, then I'm going to burn out really quick. And that's not sustainable. And so uh, we essentially said, okay, we need to get super efficient here. And a number of years ago, we made a pretty drastic shift and we essentially kind of restarted. And we rebranded and we kind of restructured our company culture and our team. And then that's when we were like focused on like not just growing the revenue, but growing the bottom line as well. And because when you grow that bottom line as well, it allows you to incentivize your team better, allows you to offer, better benefits and a better working environment, allows you to stay on top of with the latest technology, the newest equipment. You get to pick the best clients, you get to pick the best projects because you're essentially the best in your industry in your area. And that was the goal for us. We're just like, okay, hey, we want to be the number one design remodeling firm in the Upper Peninsula. And how
So
do we get to that point? Right. So that's what our organizational chart is now. Is the growth for that is okay. Now we're not just going to be in Marquette, but we're going to be in these other areas as well, and have potentially satellite offices. How do we get to that? Right. You vision plan for that, and then you work backwards and you create your organizational chart. So at this point now, because of the budgeting, back to the financing and the revenue growth, we will know when it's time to hire another project manager. We'll know when it's time to hire our, another designer, right? And so, or when we need to add on more field crew or for a production team, like it helps you plan that and work it into place. So you're not just like reactionary to everything. And sometimes that's unavoidable. Sometimes like right now, we are in a little bit of a reactionary state because we just sold 7 projects in a matter of a couple weeks. So like, okay, like production, we're going to need more people quickly.
Nope.
Right. So we're going to be hiring, some production guys, but so sometimes you do have to make the pivot, but for long-term planning, that financial tool is so important, right? To kind
Yeah.
of structure that growth and follow that budget to say, hey, you know what? We can plan for this so we don't have any like devastating setbacks financially.
Yeah,
And
that's huge.
it is, and the only reason why I know that is because I've done that to us, right? And I've put us in a really, really tough position financially because I dropped the ball on marketing, right? And then we had a 3-month period where we were like grabbing for straws at work, and that was just poor planning. But if I would been following my metrics, I would have saw that right away. But I was busy doing something else.
Yeah.
And my head wasn't I wasn't in my lane. And so it prevents that from happening too. So I'm not gonna ever take my eyes off it again.
Yeah.
Until somebody else is in my position, in this lane taking control of it for me. But yeah, so it's a really important tool.
So you're talking about, really kind of identifying, and kind of being more strategic about your growth, and you needed to identify, your target client, and your target job. Like, tell us a little bit more about like how do you decide, and figure out what is your ideal client?
Mhm. So a while back, we brought our team together and we said, okay, hey, we're going to build a red flag list for clients, right? And we're going to use this list in our vetting process for our clients, right? Because we vet our clients, I would say, just as much as our clients vet us, which I think is like the perfect, relationship to have when you're going into, because I mean, like these clients become like family members to us. We're in their house every day. And it's not like we're building a new house where we don't have to see them and interact with them. Like they're living there and we're building an addition on their house, or we're taking
Yep.
over their kitchen space and setting up a little prep kitchen for them. So we're interacting with them and their dogs and their family. So creating a red flag list for clients early on helped us define our target as well. And then we realized also that, okay, so we want to work with people that are kind. We want to work with people can make good decisions together as a couple. Um, we want to work with people that are have a good idea of what they're doing, and they've done some research, right? They like, okay, hey, you're not just like coming and saying, okay, hey, we want to do a full home remodel, and we have zero idea where to start, right? So they're not ready for that. That's a whole process in itself, is getting mentally ready to go into a renovation that big. So we look at, different things like that, and that helps us define our client there. But then also for us, um, you know, our niche is that 250 to $600,000 project, because we've got the management team in place for it, right? So we have the staff to most efficiently manage those projects. Now, smaller projects like a $30,000 bathroom, they're great, but we find that it's still a touch point for every single person in our team. And so the management's high on that. And so it's more efficient for us to do larger projects. And then over time, what we've seen is that's just kind of naturally weeded out some of the smaller projects too, because somebody that maybe wants a really quick bathroom update, they don't want to wait 6 or 9 months to start the project. And so,
Sure.
so we've kind of naturally moved our target client into that a little bit higher earning income. They're typically families then with the parents aged from like 45 to 65, and and they've got extra income, expendable income for projects they've been saving, they've been planning for it. So yeah, it's just kind of a little bit of a natural kind of growth, but also planned with the type of client, the character of the client that we want to work with too. So
Sure. And you mentioned that you rebranded the business. So
we,
how did, like, kind of what were all the factors that came into play here? I mean, new website, kind of new brand. Like, how did you sort of shift your marketing to target these higher end, you know, type clients and jobs?
yeah, so we originally started as Wilbur Construction LLC because we were going to go into commercial construction. And funny story behind that, I was going to use Jennings because that's my last name, Jennings Construction LLC, but I couldn't because I couldn't I couldn't incorporate it because it was already taken on the state level. And so I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And my wife's like, use Wilbur. I'm just like, I'm not using my name. She's like, People are going to remember that, use that." And it's just, she kind of like forced me into it. I'm happy that she did now because she was right. But but that Wilbur Construction LLC was, we kind of set up that way because it was commercial and it sounded more commercial. Well, over the years, we found that we started doing a little bit more design year after year after year. And then now people are asking us for full design, and and now we're doing, full scale drawings and very detailed drawings. And we found that we can start charging for design a few years back. And we're just like, okay, well, if that's the direction we're going, let's make that part of our business. And so that's when we decided that, okay, hey, we want people to know that we can do design and construction all in one stop. And so that's when we rebranded it, and it's been successful for us so far.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what do you do from a marketing standpoint? Like, where are your leads coming from? Are they, referrals? How much are you getting from the website? Are you doing any paid marketing, advertising, things like that?
Yeah, good question. So that's been my main focus this last year is marketing. So for the first 9 years of business, we did zero marketing. Matter of fact, in our budget, there was not even a line item that said advertising or marketing. And so that was a new concept for me. I was always word of mouth. We always stayed busy enough, and we had enough growth to do that. But when we laid out the growth, what we wanted, that just wasn't tracking. And so we need more growth to be able to hit these numbers and move to where we want and service the people that need it in these other areas. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get my head wrapped around marketing. And my first approach was we started Facebook and Instagram ad campaign. And I thought it was a huge success at first because we got tons of leads. But the problem was none of them converted to jobs. And so I was constantly busy, feeling productive, but I was really just spinning my wheels in one place and not moving anywhere. And so we stopped that. And I said, okay. And then we hired a marketing director to help us with brand awareness. And that's all we've done since then. Is we're not asking people for their work. We're not doing like ad campaigns like, oh, we'll do complimentary design if you sign a kitchen with us or something like that. Because we tried that, right? And once again, lots of leads, nobody made it through to construction. And so I said, all I want to do is help. We want to be there for people. So let's educate and let's just create brand awareness. We want everybody to know that we're here and that we can help. We don't need to sell them on anything, but let's just educate. So then we just started this educational process. And then we connected with some local, with our, the Lake Superior Community Partnership, which is like a local 7, and it helps you just network with people. And so we just went in and said, what can we do to help the community? And we started sponsoring certain things. And so that was really it. That was our big marketing push, just brand awareness and education. And so a couple of things that I plan on doing is we're going to we'll reach out and we're going to do seminars, right? I'm going to go and I'm going to speak to people and say, hey, here's you can pick my brain, or maybe here's a topic. We'll talk about what you can do to prep your house for the winter, and we'll just have a free seminar. You can come and I'll provide a lunch or something. And so I'm going to try to target some specifically some different women's groups, because typically it's the women making the decisions in kitchens and bathroom remodeling. So if I can target some different women's groups and go and just speak to them and say, hey, is there anything that I can do? Any questions that you might have if you're ever considering going into a remodeling project, or any kind of maintenance on your home or design or anything like that. Like, I'll just be there to answer questions and help if I can. Not trying to sell them, just there to educate. And so that's going to be my approach from this point forward. I don't plan on doing any like ad campaigns or, like hook like campaigns, like, yeah. So, and
That's awesome. I
yeah,
mean,
and it's been working so far.
yeah, I'm a big believer in, like, when you focus on adding value to people and
Yes.
providing them education, like helping them feel more comfortable exploring this potential project or exploring what a remodel might look like without being sold. So many people get turned off by that hard, pushy sales approach.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if now is not the right time for them, if they're not ready, if they don't have the budget, if they just don't know what they want to do, like, trying to force the sale on them, that's not going to help the situation. And even if you do get it because you're some wizard salesman, like, going into a process that is stressful and as expensive as a large remodel will be, like, you want them to be ready and prepared and educated
Mhm.
and make that decision on their own. So, I love the approach of, we're going to just show you everything you need to know, give you that education, give you the resources, be a tool. And when you're ready, come to us. And I think that often it ends up attracting a lot more people, than that pushy salesman.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, like, once you've established that relationship, it just makes the whole project experience that much better because you've
Yeah.
connected on a different level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned, potentially opening up in multiple markets. Are you already there, or is that the longer term vision?
So that's the 2 and 3 year goal, is to be, there's another college town, called Houghton, where we want to be over there, within the next year and a half. And then Iron Mountain, which is, it kind of creates this triangle. So we'll really be able to service like the whole western half of the UP, hopefully, within the next 3 years here. That's the idea.
That's
So
great. So what does that mean? Like, what all do you have to do to open up a new market?
yeah, so that's a great question, and I don't have it completely dialed in yet. But my thought process is that our home office will still be here, and most of the bulk of the front end of the project will start here, right? And so when we think about project experience, we think about right from the first time that we make that phone call after they come through, as a lead, and then we make that first phone call. What is the experience from that point to 18 months or 24 months after the project ends when we're making that final warranty call and follow up, right? So, um, that first whole pre-construction phase, we feel like we can do that from here, from our office. We've got a staff here, we've got a drafter, designers, we're set here. We don't necessarily need to have a whole nother office in these other areas, but maybe it's a satellite office. So maybe and my idea is, purchasing real estate up there because my wife and I like to invest in real estate, purchasing an office building in those areas, and then soon, and then being able to rent out a space to our business once we move into those areas, and just have it'd be like a management like office, like for a project manager, and somebody can check in there, and then have a couple guys in the field, and really that's all I think all we need to handle the big projects because we put all these systems and processes in place already. And you would not be able to do anything like that. You wouldn't be able to scale like that if you were relying on the people there to do all of the quality oversight and all the everything on their own, right? So that's what we've really been working on, these systems and processes, so that we can expand into those areas with 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 uh with a little bit of overhead. So
Wow.
that's kind of what it looks like. It's little satellite offices and just putting the right people into place, but
Yep.
not a huge thing. What I've been focusing on now is building the subcontractor relationships early on now, so that way we can, when we get there, we're ready to go. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it sounds like a great plan, and I love the notion of you're investing in some real estate there. You can then
yeah,
lease the space back to your own company, but then also maybe you're having a couple other tenants. Who knows? And it's like you've got some other income coming in. It's that's a good way to sort of diversify as well as enable
yeah,
expansion.
yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So what's the 5 to 10 year vision here? Where do you see, and want to take the business kind of longer term?
hmm Um, so we in part of our 20 club discussions, what we do is we put together these little kind of like TED Talks, for each one of our meetings. And, uh, we did one on strategic legacy planning, and that really got me thinking about like, what is my exit plan going to look like? Right. What is the company going to look like after I've removed myself from the company? Or is it just going to dissolve? Is it just going to get auctioned off like 99.9% of construction businesses, right? That are this size. And so, the 5 to 10 year plan is going to probably be putting in some sort of, maybe like an ESOP or some sort of, transitional plan to, offload the company to the current staff, the current team, or maybe a couple key players, or, plan for, um, you know, someone else to buy. I mean, our kids are at the age right now where, 15 years from now, they might consider doing it. My son, he's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just take over your business, dad," but he changes his mind, every other day. So, so
It's
that's
funny.
kind of the 5 year 10 plan, is just to get ready for that transition out of the business. Because I want to create a business that's going to last, um, as the new team is developing as well, right? And for them to be safeguarded against, just folding up the doors and auctioning everything off, because I've seen that happen so many times around here. And
Yep.
so to be able to put that into place and create that structure, I think really invites, you know, talented people to join your team, knowing that even if I'm gone, that they're still secured.
Yep.
So that's the 5 to 10 year plan, is getting
Awesome.
that put into place.
That sounds like a good plan. I mean, again, it's you don't have to have it all figured out. It's just kind of
Yeah.
you got some options, some things you can explore when the time is right. But
Yeah.
look, I really appreciate this whole conversation, Wilbur. Like you've shared so much valuable insight into how you have started, from the very beginning, building this all by yourself, selling the jobs, wearing the tool belt, to now spending your time, strategically managing the business thinking about how you can expand, how you continue to grow, and just keep excelling. Uh, I, I'm curious, if you had to start all over today, like, is there anything that you wish you would have known that you now know, back at the beginning, that like you would share, or give some advice to anyone else who's earlier on, how could they achieve this same level of success that took you 10 years, maybe how do they do it in 5? Like, what do you wish you would have known? What advice do you have?
Yeah, I wish I would have listened to my wife earlier on.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I hope she doesn't watch this, but she probably will, and then she can come back and say, "Yeah, I told you." But no, she was really instrumental in the growth of the business too, and I don't think she gets enough credit because she's sometimes in the sidelines or in the background, but she's a big support for me. She's always been my anchor for that. And so listening to her earlier on and not arguing with her so much about, like if I would have started job costing when she told me to first start job costing, I probably would have understood a little bit more earlier on. I probably would have shifted a little bit quicker. But knowing what I know now, I I wouldn't have been so stubborn, right? Because uh, you know, essentially building a business, it's kind of like, you get this like almost like this ownership of like, okay, this is mine and I don't want anybody to touch it. I don't want anybody to mess with it. And so when I first started, I was, all my invoicing, like the payroll, I was doing everything by hand and spreadsheets. And I mean, it was exhausting. I learned it and I understood it. But if I would have just immediately said, okay, I'm adopting QuickBooks day one, right? I would have saved myself 3 years, right? If I would have immediately said, okay, I'm going to jump into JobTread day one and learn this before I even start. I mean, I would have catapulted myself forward with systems and processes. So it's just not being so stubborn, I think would have really moved me forward quicker, and not thinking that I had to do it a certain way or learn the hard way. Um, because, that's just been kind of like the way I've lived my life. And, now that I'm just like getting old, I'm just like, there's shortcuts this, because there's like 1,000 other people that have done it way better than you've done it, and they're willing to share.
Yeah.
And so, listening to podcasts and just taking the advice from people that have been down the road, I really wish I would have done that more earlier on, because we would be 10 times the company we are right now if I would have done that earlier on. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate, podcasts like that you put out here, and that other people put out for, to just share this kind of knowledge, because, early on you kind of feel like you're alone and you don't really have any direction, and there's a lot to learn from other people. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, hey, look, again, I very much appreciate you coming on and sharing this and giving back, paying it forward, if you will, to help others out there. I mean,
yeah,
it really does make a big impact. And, it's been awesome being able to kind of just be a fly on the wall here, watching, you continue to build such a great business. And, I can't wait to see what the next, 2 to 3 years, and how you, expand into new markets. I mean, it sounds like a really awesome, exciting challenge, exciting time for the company. And, I can't wait to see you make it happen, man.
yeah. I appreciate that, Eric, and it's been a real pleasure talking with you as well. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. See you.
But
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.